Federal prosecutor Brett Tolman. Good morning to you, Brett.
Good morning.
Why do you say that?
You know, an intelligent, thoughtful prosecutor would do exactly what Alvin Bragg did when he first reviewed this case, which was to look at it and say, okay, the statute of limitations has actually passed on the real underlying charge on the hush money that I could bring, which is a misdemeanor. The only other, avenue would be to suggest that there was some sort of fraud that was committed using campaign funds. Well, the Justice Department reviewed that and declined to prosecute. And this is a Justice Department who has proven they will go after Mr. Trump. And that would be an intelligent, thoughtful prosecutor to look at that and say, okay, I don't want to go into court and actually address the judge and jury with some of the worst facts there are to pursue the former president of the United States in a criminal trial that I'll be known for the rest of my life.
Right. And here is Cyrus Vance. You know what? Listen to this, Brett. Cyrus Vance, the previous district attorney that Alvin Bragg replaced, refused to do. He decided he's not going to bring this case forward. He was asked about why Alvin Bragg is. Listen.
We began our investigation in roughly 2017. At the same time, we learned that the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York were looking at Mr. Trump as well. And I was asked by the Southern District to stand our efforts down. I was prepared to defer to them. I was surprised, therefore, in 2018 when Michael Cohen pled guilty that the Southern District never went anywhere with that case, and it stopped.
That was April 4th, 2023. Nothing, and he does not know what changed. Do you?
I do. I'll tell you what changed. What changed was one of the prosecutors on the case that was investigating it and upset that they were not bringing charges, resigned from the office, wrote a book about how he thought the case should be brought. That's right. And then with that pressure, they bullied Alvin Bragg into the courtroom. And I'll tell you, I've faced juries when I've had bad facts, and it is the most uncomfortable thing to do in your career.
Look, Brett, we hate to interrupt you, but look at this. This is Donald Trump coming out of Trump Tower, heading down to the court because the jury selection begins today. Are you surprised that he's going to go to the courtroom? Would you recommend as an attorney for him to be there?
With a quick wave.
I think it's important. They may be missing the best charge they have against him, and that's jaywalking. I mean, it is important for him to be there. This jury selection is going to be interesting. Each side's going to be able to get rid of about 10 to 15 jurors. So they'll seat the first set of jurors that are acceptable. And it's all going to be about their political leanings and whether they have a bias towards the president or not.
So this is going to be the spectacle every day of this trial, except for Wednesdays. At the end of it, like you point out, it's going to be the worst case that Alvin Bragg will forever be remembered for. But if the past is any sort of indication, that Donald Trump is going to make a lot of political hay out of this.
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's interesting. Alvin Bragg has raised, according to Newsweek, almost $1 million already of political funding based on bringing this case. But Donald Trump exponentially grows more popular as they use bad facts and bad law to try to bury him and take him out of the election.
Think about how much money, too, has gone into his security. Defending him, guarding against him, the NYPD overtime, Secret Service. Look at this. Traffic stops. And everybody in the courtroom is getting paid. I mean, it's a massively expensive operation.
Brett, but I know we want to talk about the politics, the legal aspect of this. Is there any recourse when it comes to these judges, though? Because it seems like they have become increasingly political. They could check these cases and say, look, you don't have standing here. This legal maneuver to make a misdemeanor a felony. What are the judges doing here?
Yeah, Lawrence, I think you're right. What is the recourse? We can file bar complaints. You can file an ethics complaints to the clerk of the court. But judges are virtually untouchable, and so are prosecutors, because we have expanded immunity laws so greatly in this country that you don't have a recourse against them. You might be able to sue Alvin Bragg if you get an acquittal in this case. There may be enough there to get past the initial motion to dismiss. But other than that, that's what, many of us have been saying. Be careful when you weaponize the justice system, because we have allowed it to grow with no accountability and no transparency.
Right. And then you just wonder how this is going to take place if it gets done by Memorial Day, if there's a conviction, what changes. And then when there's a sentencing, after the president's been sparring with this judge, doing everything to get him kicked out, going still aggressively after the hush, after the gag order was put into place. And then you wonder, well, that guy is going to decide would he decide to put Donald Trump in jail?
He has authority to take him forthwith if he is convicted at his sentencing, meaning to take him as soon as the conviction occurs. If the jury convicts him, he has that authority to take him and put him in custody at that moment, which opens a whole new can of worms.
Right. What about choosing the jurors? They have to choose 12 plus 6 alternates. What would you be looking for if you are Donald Trump's attorney?
What you want, he's unpopular in Manhattan. It's true. People know that. But there's pockets of popularity. You want individuals that are intelligent. You want to try to get to individuals that don't have a clear bias for the left in politics. You also want individuals that are going to be able to see through. Look, this is a case that it hinges on a serial perjurer. That Alvin Bragg has to be successful by presenting a serial perjurer and an unlikable lawyer as his main evidence. So it should not be too hard to find at least a couple of jurors that don't feel comfortable with that.
Look at this. We have everything. We got Manhattan wired. Yeah. We're watching this whole thing. And this will be every day for the next 4 weeks.
So Brett, except for Wednesday, is there any legal explanation why Cohen as well as Daniels are able to speak, but Donald Trump is gagged in this case?
None whatsoever. It's a purely unethical, an unlawful, I believe, based on its application. You cannot. It's one thing to issue a gag order in a criminal case, which is done typically to protect the defendant in the case rather than the government. But to do it and allow some the ability to talk and others is biased decision making by a judge.
So assuming that Trump abides by the gag order, which I just assume that he's not going to, but assuming that he does, the guy's a master because he walks out and he sees a bank of cameras, and he doesn't need to talk about the case. In fact, he can talk about whatever he wants to talk about, and he's going to take advantage of that. And it's going to be, he's going to
talk about the case.
Yeah,
you know him.
And he'll talk about the case as well. Or he'll talk about, he'll do it in pig Latin, but then he'll talk about whatever else he wants to talk about. But he's going to take advantage of the cameras, and people are going to tune in. This is going to be better than the O.J. trial. People are going to tune in just to hear whatever hilarious stuff he has to say.
No, that's exactly right. The plan, it seems, was to utilize multiple prosecutors across this country to take down Donald Trump. That fear is very, very likely in their eyes. That was a good strategy. Well, it changes when you actually get there. And then you start to realize, wow, did we really do this? And have we just given him a massive platform?
Well, the other thing is, how do you win this case? We look at this and we say most of the people didn't vote for Donald Trump. But let's say you get someone on that trial who get someone on that jury that wants to be open-minded. If you're the defense, how do you win it? How do you exonerate your client?
Well, that's exactly right. You only need one juror, really, to be thoughtfully looking at this case and say, okay, so we have a serial perjurer who's telling me that this was hush money, that it was that we're not bringing that case. We're bringing the case that they in their audits, in their bookkeeping, they categorized this payment as a legal retainer, which did go to a lawyer, but we think it should have said hush money. And because it didn't say hush money on there, well, then that's a campaign violation, because we're not 100% sure, but we think that money came from campaign funding. So that's the case they're presenting. And tell me there isn't a thoughtful juror in New York. And New Yorkers might be more thoughtful in this particular